the LA Galaxy and Chancho's Tacos are sending trucks to various sites throughout LA.
Oh, yeah, there you go. You had to pull it out. Oh, what do you know, Todd? How's that?
Hello.
Hey,
Hello.
ding, ding. Ching, ching, ching.
Kenobi with a right-footed shot. He scores!
What's up, hermano?
Hi. I just want to say thank you for all the things that you are doing for us.
We do stay home, not only for our loved ones, but,
for you.
to not overload for you guys.
Much love and be safe, okay, bro?
Thank you.
God bless you. God bless you.
Chastain will take it.
Hey, welcome everybody to episode 4 of Rose Bowl Live. I'm your guest, Annie Myers Drysdale, and it was an honor to be a guest for all of your last week with fellow Olympian Lauren Gibbs. And I'm excited to be back this week for another valuable discussion with some of our friends from the 99ers. Oops, I can't read this thing. And, as always,
Welcome to my world, Ann.
And on behalf of our entire stadium team, we hope you remain safe, happy, and healthy as we continue to keep a close eye on this COVID-19 virus. And so hopefully everybody is with family and you're all clean and certainly being safe. But before we get to introducing our guests, we'd like to take a moment to thank the Los Angeles Galaxy as partners in today's program. They've been incredible partners to the Rose Bowl, and we are thrilled as the partnership which helped to bring today's show about soccer to so many. As we step into our virtual stadium and begin episode 4, thousands of you have tuned in to hear Hall of Famers, broadcast legends, and key members of the Rose Bowl family. And today we shift gears and welcome 2 more trailblazers, World Cup champions and Olympic medalists to the program. As you all know, the Rose Bowl Stadium has hosted 2 World Cup finals so far, with a third potentially coming in 2026. The most iconic World Cup final has to be 1999, when the women's team from Team USA defeated China. It's a memory that was so important to female athletics and soccer in this nation, and the impact is still being felt today. So let's go to our guests, 2 key members of that championship team in 1999, Julie Foudy and Brandi Chastain. So Julie, we're going to start with you, a former captain of the USA women's national team. She was a midfielder from the team from 1987 through 2004. During her 17-year national team tenure, the U.S. women won 2 FIFA Women's World Cup titles and captured 2 Olympic gold medals and the silver medal in 2000. One of the most accomplished soccer players in the world, finishing her career with 271 international matches. She was inducted into the National Soccer Hall of Fame in 2007. She was a 4-time All-American at Stanford and in 1991 Soccer America Player of the Year. Currently, Julie serves as one of the key voices for ESPN Soccer and ESPNW. She was the lead analyst for ESPN's coverage of the U.S. women's national team in recent World Cups. And so, Julie, let us know what you've been doing during this shutdown time with the COVID-19 and with your family, and how are you staying busy?
Hi, Ann.
Hey,
I'm
Julie.
good. I'm good. It's I feel super blessed. We have space. We have a backyard. We have trails to hike. So we live in a nice climate here in Southern California. So all comparatively has been good. And literally I was supposed to be gone all summer, from the Euros to the Olympics to Little League World Series. I think I had 2.5 months straight on the road. And now my kids get me till at least September. I'm like, I'm here. Let's go. So it's been good, though. It's been all right.
So you've been teaching at home and giving haircuts to Ian?
I was disclosing pre-recording when this went live that I buzzed my husband's head off. Not literally buzzed it off. That sounds bad. I did not decapitate.
You
my
are always so
husband.
good with words.
Just
Jules. So
his
good with
hair.
words.
There was no decapitation, just his hair. I was buzzing. So yeah, and then the kids actually, my kids are a perfect age. They're 11 and 13, and so they're fairly self-sufficient with their homeschooling. And my goal is if they're cooking a 5-course meal for us by the end of this, it will have been successful.
Well, keep them learning those skills as far as the kitchen is concerned.
Right?
So now we're going to go to Brandi Chastain. She was inducted into the National Soccer Hall of Fame as part of the class of 2016. She enjoyed a 12-year international career, which included winning 2 Olympic gold medals and 1 silver, as well as competing in the 3 FIFA Women's World Cups with 2 titles. She finished her career playing 192 international matches and scoring 30 goals for the U.S. women's national team from 1988 to 2004. Brandi's iconic penalty kick sealed a hard-fought match against China and a memorable run by the Team USA in the 1999 Women's World Cup, and it happened in the Rose Bowl, and it's still exciting to see it today. Brandi continues to grow the game by coaching women's soccer at her alma mater, Santa Clara, where she was an All-American. So Brandi, checking in, how's the quarantine going? And how was Mother's Day, actually, for both of you? But Brandi, start with you.
You know what? Mother's Day actually was quite nice. The weather was beautiful. I'm here in the better part of California, in the northern half, and so we had great weather. My son and my husband made brunch for my mother-in-law and myself, and it was a lovely day. So I hope your Mother's Day was also as nice. I know you're with your daughter Drew. I'm not sure if your sons are around or not. But it was very nice. Yeah, it was very nice. And I was talking, like Julie was, about her exploits as a hairdresser now. I've been trying to talk my son into allowing me to cut his hair, which has become, it needs pretty much a clip or a ponytail, but he's not going for it. I haven't been able to talk him into it. So, we're handling things quite well. Like Julie, I think we're lucky we have space that we can get outside, and we've enjoyed being together for the most part, minus me trying to be the principal of school, which has been really not my forte, I guess. So he tells me.
Well, and both of you talk about, Brandi, start with you, talk about a little bit, as we talked earlier, as far as you guys have been staying busy. Julie, 2.5 months of what you were supposed to be doing, but now the two of you have kind of been doing a lot of podcasts and interviews and Instagrams. And so, Brandi, talk a little bit about how busy you've been doing that.
Well, you know what, to be honest with you, I'm really feeling that this has been an amazing gift during this time. I coach youth soccer for the California Thorns up here, and again, like I said, in Northern California. And we were in the U.S. Soccer Development Academy, which just dissolved itself during this COVID situation. And, that was a big problem for all of our teams and the 200 plus teams that were playing in the league. And so it's been a mad dash trying to figure out what we're going to do with our kids and where are we going to play. And so we've been quite busy during this time. And soccer hasn't stopped. We've been really creative. I'm very proud of what our coaching staff and our club has done, like countless clubs around the country. We're trying to stay engaged with our kids. We want them to continue to touch the ball a lot. One thing that we probably don't get to as much or even scratch the surface of, which is strength and conditioning for our kids and for our youngest girls in this kind of middle school age group, learning how to have a healthy relationship with your body, be that physically, emotionally, understand when it feels good, when it doesn't feel good. So we've really unearthed some interesting things for us, and we've been working really hard. So I think this is actually, it's been nice to have a break from soccer, the repetitive days that we've had, because they play a lot. And now they're starting to learn how to be stronger and have a really nice relationship with their body. So it's been incredible in the coaching department, to be honest with you.
Well, and Julie, too, you talked about, as much as you've been broadcasting and working on that end of it, you've had your academy and your soccer camps and so forth. So that is virtual. Are you still doing that?
Well, it's interesting. That's what we're trying to navigate right now, because we do our Leadership Academy in the summer in New Jersey and one actually in Northern California. So we're not actually going to do the Leadership Academy, sadly. But we'll do a virtual component for some of the people that were coming and for all our alumni who have been. I mean, it's been 15 years we've been doing this. And so this would actually be the first year we've had to cancel, of course. So we will do some type of virtual programming for them during that week. But I've been doing a lot of podcasting stuff. So a ton of interviews from here. I mean, you can beam into Bristol, obviously, to ESPN with your TVU app pretty easily, minus my bouncy Wi-Fi that they don't like, which is why I go a little blurry. It's not that I'm drinking too many Moscow Mules, or you are, maybe the viewer. But so yeah, I've been doing a ton from the office, and we launched season 3 recently, so we've been trying to crank those out and get a few in the can. So that's always fun too. I love them. It's quite different though, because we usually would do it around someone's kitchen table, or in some communal space where we could gather together and you're with each other. And so that's been an interesting challenge, doing it by Zoom.
Listening to both of you, where you are in your lives and career as far as giving back and being in the lives of these young girls that are, whether it's Leadership Academy and the soccer and so forth. But look back where you were. I mean, late 90s, early 80s is really when AYSO started, when you guys were starting. And you look back at 6 and 8 years old and how you were when you started. How did you start, first of all, getting into soccer at that early an age? Because it was brand new. Soccer in this country in the late 70s, early 80s was new. Did you have role models? I mean, there was no soccer league back then. I mean, who would have thought that you guys would have been the forefront of where it is today? But talk about where it was when you guys were coming up. Julie, we'll start with you. And then where it is for these young girls today.
Yeah, I mean, AYSO, I didn't start till I was 7 years old. And I can hear the collective gasps. People go, "Oh my gosh, you were 7? You waited that long?" I literally was like, "Mom, sign me up for something." And she's like, "You're too young. You're 6. You can't do it." At 7, she finally was like, "Okay, they have this new thing called AYSO. You can do it." So I played AYSO, and really we were on, at least my generation, because I feel like I'm a generation younger than Brandi. My generation.
Oh God, here we go. Here we go.
We were just on the cusp of the club program starting, and so really early on, I got on a really great club. It's not around anymore, Mission Viejo Soccer Club, but and played with that team for 10 years, literally from 8 to 18. I played on the mighty Soccerettes, Go Green Machine. And
do your cheer.
Nobody messes with the Green Machine. Nobody even attempts the scene. Want me to keep going? Okay, yeah. Nobody messes with the Green Machine, because the Green Machine is mean. Ow!
What number were you?
11.
Oh my God.
What number were you?
11. I was 11. I've always been double number 1. That's why I wanted it. I wanted to be number 1, and that wasn't available because it goes to the goalkeepers. And I was like, I'll take double number 1 then, thanks. But I will tell you, the national team, every time we would sign autographs for a green team, I would go, nobody messes with the Green Machine. And they'd be like, "Oh my God, Julie, zip it. Stop it." But literally, by the end of our career, Brandi, what were you doing?
Oh, I was so loving that.
You were singing with me.
You had it.
Yeah, I was singing with you.
Was it just Julie, or was it just Brandi, or did you have them all singing?
All of them. They'd all start doing nobody.
It's quite. You can tell it's quite catchy. Yeah. Yeah.
So, Brandi, as far as you when you started playing.
Well, as Julie has told everybody, I'm very old. So we had square soccer balls and
leather.
Yeah, they were
full leather.
They were rocks, actually.
Had to wear skirts.
Yeah. I I played in I think I signed up just a little bit later than Julie. I think I was between 7 and 8. And my parents realized that they had a kid who just loved to be outside. And nobody in my family had any experience, which I'm sure was the case maybe in Julie's family too, where no experience with soccer whatsoever, but it just came to the neighborhood. So I played neighborhood soccer, and my dad became my coach, and he was my coach from the time I was 8.5 till I was 16. And it's so much different, Annie, as you know, what it was like then, 2 practices a week and a game on the weekend, and lots of pizza parties and slumber parties and other sports in between, and riding skateboards and climbing trees and all the things that we did for fun that seem to kind of don't get looked at with the same kind of, I think, not seriousness, but like, hey, that's what kids should do, because now all kids are kind of in this professional kind of mentality, right? So it was great then. And, my dad was a wonderful coach until he stopped coaching, because the girls were, they just decided to go in all different kinds of directions. And that's when I think I started to get more serious about soccer, and that was right around the first time I think I went to a national team camp, kind of like, where you got a piece of paper that said, hey, you made the national team. And so it's been a love affair, for a long time, because, soccer came to my community from the North American Soccer League when Pelé played for the Cosmos. And luckily for me, George Best played on the San Jose Earthquakes. And my parents just saw that I loved soccer, so they bought season tickets. And I was transfixed. Like, even today, I got up at 3:30 in the morning because I knew at 6 o'clock the Bundesliga was having a game with no fans in the stadium. But I was so excited. I was up early. I learned about how I could become a referee in the Premier League for an hour. And then now I got to watch a live game for the first time in 75 days or whatever. But soccer has just been a part of my life, and I love it probably more today than I did when I was 8.
Well, you had some adversity. Well, junior high, you played on the boys' team because they didn't have a girls' team.
Yeah.
And then talk about your college days, because you went to Cal, but then you had a lot of adversity with your knee injuries. And who would have thought you'd make the national team or be freshman player of the year or make national player of the year, and transferring to a different school? And, a lot of people think something happens to them, their journey changes directions, and then not that they quit, but they get frustrated. But you've had a lot of adversity.
Yeah, I'm really grateful for all of the opportunities I've had, for the highs and the lows, because they really have kept me in this. I'm reading a book right now. Actually, I have it here. I'm not promoting this, but I think it's a good read. Mindset.
The best. That's
it's so
best.
good. And
Carol Dweck. I love that book.
Yeah, she's so
I
good.
love her.
And and she, but what she says about mindset is kind of what my life's journey was. You're going to fall down a lot. You're going to have to pick yourself up. I was on the national team for the 91 World Cup. I was cut, and I was off the 95 team, and I came back right after that in 96. And it was with the support of Julie and the players. It was the support of my family. It was my love for the game. So many good things came out of those times. And I ended up, like you said, I transferred from Berkeley, and I ended and finished my career at Santa Clara University, where I now get to coach some of the best players in the country. Julie Ertz, again, just was named U.S. Soccer Player of the Year. It's been a blessing to be able to watch these young women come through our program and go on to do great things. So I think, the agility that soccer has given me on and off the field has really been a life skill that I'm using as a parent, as a friend, as a coach, and I'm really grateful.
Well, Julie, talk about the impact as far as Brandi mentioned Pele. And, when you guys were growing up, were there any women athletes that you looked up to? And I will have to say, I don't know if you can see this picture, but this was your golf tournament. And my daughter, Drew, when she was
look at her.
old, you and Drew, and became big buddies on the golf course.
Love me some Drew.
But just the impact that, who made the impact on you, and now the impact that you guys all are making on so many young people?
Well, it's interesting because I grew up here in Southern California. So, you watch what your parents watch essentially as a kid, right? My dad, a huge Dodger fan. We watched the LA Rams. Yes, of course, Annie. We watched the Lakers a ton. So it was back in the James Worthy, Michael Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Michael Cooper, man.
Michael Cooper.
Yeah.
I know you just really follow basketball so well.
Magic Johnson. She's old. So that was our I was trying to emulate guys that were 300-pound linemen or 8 feet tall. And I didn't have any females that I could watch really. And there was no soccer on TV back then, clearly. So I didn't have many female role models. I think what was so neat for me was when I got exposed to the Women's Sports Foundation in college, suddenly I'm exposed to Annie Myers Drysdale, right? I'm exposed to Billie Jean King and Donna DeVerona and the history and the richness of these pioneers in their various sports. Nancy Lieberman. I mean, you go down the list of all that have been connected to the Women's Sports Foundation and what you guys have done. I
like those UCLA and basketball people that you're mentioning.
Sue Anquist will go to UCLA softball, right? Like these giants of the game that suddenly I understood their story because I just never felt like I had any stories to follow as a kid. And it's why I think we as first generations, we call ourselves, the first gen of soccer, took that so seriously that was important to us as not only athletes, but as humans, that we wanted in role models. We wanted young girls and young boys to have female role models that they could look up to. And that because we just didn't have that. I don't know, Brandi, if you had any female role models growing up. Did you?
Well, I would say that the number one person in my life was my mom. She was such a go-getter, and she never took no for an answer. She left a phrase with me when she left here, my presence, and it was find your yes. And she showed me every day. She lived that phrase because she would go to work wearing a suit in Silicon Valley when women weren't, in high tech and working in those kind of positions. And so she didn't sit me down and give me the lesson, like today you're going to learn this, but I watched her every day, and the kindness and compassion and love she shared with anybody and everybody. She loved a good tailgate. So, she loved to invite people into her circle, and then she made them feel like they were friends. And so I would say my mom was probably the biggest influence on me on and off the soccer field, because she was she was pre-Title IX. And so she wasn't encouraged to play. She was encouraged to play single sports. Like she loved tennis. She wanted me to be a tennis player so bad. I really broke her heart when I didn't choose tennis. It wasn't dirty enough for me, but I think if I had seen Serena Williams at that time, I probably would have, even though I loved Billie Jean King and Chrissy Everett, those women were obviously very large in my mom's life. But I think, Jules, to your point, I think Netflix is now going to be doing a movie. And this will be a great opportunity for young girls to look at their own history and say, this is where soccer came from. And these are the people that were involved. And, and forever going forward, they will have a resource and say, I remember when, or that person influenced me like this. And so I'm sure Jules will tell you too, Annie, that we're so excited about that, this project that's coming up, because it's going to tell a story to a generation of young girls who, even though they have Google, they can look it up, maybe they'll see the story for the first time.
Well, Netflix is going to do a 99ers, but you guys have already had a documentary also where you all got back together in the 99ers, and that term being because you won the World Cup in 1999. But the fact that you guys are this icon that have come along at the right time with TV, with the media, to be able to cover you guys, I wanted to ask, not what is more important, what stands out more, the FIFA World Cup or the Olympics? What is the difference between the two? And that seems to be where the most exposure for women's soccer is right now in those two events. Julie?
That's always a tough one. I mean, they're obviously, for a soccer player, it's your sport only. It's the pinnacle of your sport. It's once every 4 years, unlike other sports where maybe they have a world championship every year. I mean, this is it. You grind and you grind for years for that quadrennial event in soccer. So I would say probably World Cup is, the very top for us, but like not very far below it is the Olympics, because the Olympics, for me, it has always been something almost magical. It's the one time, except for the summer, of course, because we can't gather the world together, but it's the one time where you can gather all corners of the globe under literally and figuratively one roof. And it's fascinating as an athlete, because you're sitting there in, the dining hall and you're watching all these countries walk by. And I just you feel like you're part of something bigger than sport, which is really neat as well. And so it's a very different feeling. But I think for soccer players, the World Cup is your pinnacle because it's your sport.
Brandi?
Yeah, I will agree 100% with Julie on that. I thought our journey through the Olympic Games was remarkable. That 96 games, soccer is a unique sport in the Olympics because you don't play in one venue. You have to do a lot of traveling, and we didn't get to stay in the village. And so the moments that we got to go to the village we did the opening ceremonies and we did the closing ceremonies. And to be able to go there and, like she said, walk through the dining hall. I mean, you see a 7'2" basketball player and a 4'6" gymnast standing next to each other. They're the best in the world. And so, I think the first time we went to the Olympics, it was the first time women's soccer had been a part of the Olympic Games. So that was also, I think, something that was just so monumental for our sport to be.
And the United States.
Yes, in the United States, and to be kind of held in the same conversations as all these other athletes that, were going to the Olympic Games was quite spectacular. And I think then we went to then our second Olympic Games in 2000 in Sydney. And again, we're not staying in the village, but when we get in those environments, all of a sudden people are looking at you like you're the veteran and you've been to the Olympics before. And, you want to get pictures with our team and their team. And so, like Julie said, it's amazing how the world can find peace and togetherness and be able to cheer, the virtues that really are what the Olympics are all about, being your best on the day and celebrating that and celebrating just the accomplishment of being there as well at the same time, I think is spectacular. But again, to play in the Rose Bowl, probably the most storied, most beautiful, most embraced stadium in our country for the Women's World Cup. I mean, that's like nothing beats that. That was incredible. And, to have a chance to run on that field and with some of the legends of sport history for women's soccer, I think that was probably one of the greatest days we'll ever have.
Both of you, take us back. Brandi, first of all, take us back to July 10th. What it was like setting up, put on that penalty kick, how you got selected, what are the emotions and feelings going through with your teammates that you're talking about, and being at the Rose Bowl?
Yeah, I think that day started off quite uniquely. Julie would agree, right? So we come to the stadium, and back in those times, they didn't. They played back-to-back games, third, fourth place, and then the championship game would come right after it. So we actually didn't get to warm up on the field. So here you are, it's the biggest game of your life in the biggest stadium with the biggest crowd, and you're running circles in the locker room, or you're running up and down the hill in the tunnel next to the bus. And if that moment wasn't exactly meant for our team, I don't know any moment that was, because we took it in stride. We laughed, we turned up the music, we had a great time. And that was basically, I think, the essence of our team. Like, we would take any scenario and say, okay, it's the best scenario, it's the worst scenario, but we got it. And so I think that's, that kind of prepared us for, that's kind of a microcosm of what the national team was all about. And going through that game was incredible.
What was your song?
Oh gosh. Well, there was Livin' La Vida Loca. What else was there, Julie?
Oh God, I have to watch the 99ers again.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of music in that.
Yeah, there was a lot of music and
Julie,
dancing, and Julie was normally in your face all the time.
Dancing.
Yes, dancing.
Which is never
Julie,
a good thing.
Talk about that bus rolling up, and it was so hot for the people in the stands. It had to be hot on the field, but such a tough game with China.
Yeah.
They were one of your rivals, but talk about leading up to that game with China and then being in the Rose Bowl, that you knew that you said it was a special place to have the finals for the World Cup. But just kind of that whole day, first of all, the lead up to play in the Rose Bowl against China, and then how hot it was.
Yeah. Well, the Rose Bowl, I don't know the exact capacity, but it's what, 90-ish, let's say. So we knew, like, wow, this is a huge venue. This is the final. We've got a lot of naysayers and non-believers who would say to us pre-starter World Cup, what are you doing? What if it's half empty? How dare you throw it in such big stadiums? And yet we always believe, like, our mission was to get to the Rose Bowl. We got to get to that 90,000 seat stadium. We're gonna pack that house. We're gonna rock that house. And so to finally, after literally 2 years of clinics and promotional things we were doing, and I mean, if you wanted us to go door to door in this block, yes, I would do it for you. Hey, do you guys know the World Cup?
Yeah, it was kissing babies and shaking hands everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, anything we could do, we were like, get butts in the seats. We're going to prove people wrong with this. They think we can't fill these stadiums. We're going to show them this should be the standard. So to pull in, and as we watched just the enthusiasm for what we were doing that summer grow, it was a lifelong dream. And I would say, people go, were you surprised? I said, no, we always believed if you sold it right, and you invested in it, and you marketed it, and you told people about it, and you made it a big deal, people would come. And so, but still, you get to that moment, I think it was the Hanson brothers were singing, and the Blue Angels were flying over, and, we're standing on the field sweating because it's so hot. And I just remember in the national anthems playing, and I'm starting to get like emotional and teary. And it's all this energy, and I'm like, I can't be losing it right now. This is not good. Hold it together. You've got 90 minutes. Little did I know it was a lot more than 90. But it all kind of hit, and that was not the time for it to hit. I kept thinking, like, not now. You got to be focused. So, and then perfectly scripted, where Brandi, of all people, and what we didn't know until after the fact, and we talk about, for those who have seen the documentary, the 99ers we did for ESPN, but Brandi wasn't even going to take the fifth penalty, right? Because she had an ankle issue, right, Brandi, on your penalty kicking right foot.
Yeah. And
so she was going to have to take it with her weak foot, her left foot. And they ended up making this last minute decision to put Brandi in as the fifth kicker, which is amazing. She's taking it. They're like, Brandi, do you want it? She's like, yeah. Typically Brandi, right? Yeah, like, I'll take the fifth kick with my weak foot to win a World Cup, no problem, in front of 90,000 people. And she was the absolute perfect person for that, because there's people who are built for these moments, right? And Brandi is one of those people. Like, in that pressure situation, she always sees pressure as a privilege and embraces it, and with a smile on her face, right? Like, let's go. And so I just knew as I was standing there, and especially because I was next, I was like, this, because I don't want to take one. that she would finish it perfectly, which she did.
Well, Brandi, talk a little bit about leading up, and Julie, you say it great as far as having her have a bad foot and the left foot and just rising when the occasion is needed. But you had told a story when the statue celebrating the 20th anniversary of the 1999 World Cup victory, that they've got a statue outside the Rose Bowl, and I love the wall that has everybody's name on it. That was such a special day. But you told a story too about leading up to that you had played. Was it, I don't know whether it was China before, and what had happened when you had, I don't know, missed the penalty kick or it got blocked or whatever, but helped you lead up to where this moment was now at the Rose Bowl.
Right. So every year we would go to Portugal, which was probably our favorite place in the world to go for the tournament there. And we were playing China in the last game. And
excellent crepes and red wine and golf
and surprisingly Indian food as well, and ice cream. Yes, all very good.
All of it. I miss the national team the most during those times. Sorry.
No.
Sidebar. Carry on.
No, I think that just again goes to the flavor of our experience. But we were playing China in that tournament, and now turned out it was preparation for the World Cup, really. And we had a penalty kick. Mia went down, and myself and Michelle were the designated penalty kick takers, and Michelle was not in that game. Mia went down. I stepped up to take the penalty kick. I put the ball down, and as I did, the goalkeeper was standing like right in front of me. And that was very unusual. And Gao Hong, as we all know, we played with her in the WUSA. She was with the New York Power. Really great goalkeeper, super personality, hilarious, just wacky as all goalkeepers are. She really kind of threw me off. It was like this psychological espionage she played on me, and and the referee blew her whistle, and I hit the ball with my right foot, and it sailed and it hit the crossbar and it came out, and we ended up losing that game 2-1. And so in the lead up to the World Cup, Jules, you can remember that all of our practices were open to the public. It was awesome. People could come and watch. And so I think part of the left-footed situation was that Tony also was quite worried that China had been watching our practices. And if you remember, Jules, he would always say, like, in the practices for free kicks, make sure you take them right and left-footed from all different places, hit them in the different corners, whatever. So I think he was a little bit wary about that and the last penalty kick. So for me, as I was sitting at the midfield, and honestly, I think, like you said, Anne, it was so hot that day. And I remember everybody who sees me is like, oh, I was at that game. And then they say, and it was so hot. And I say, I know, it was so hot. And I didn't get water either. They're always like, they ran out of water. And I'm like, oh, I know. We didn't get water either on that 100. It was like 120 degrees down there on that field. When I was standing at the midfield, all I could think about was, not looking at the goalkeeper, that I honestly was not thinking about the order of things. And I really didn't know what order it was. And so I was just waiting because I didn't want to interrupt anybody's preparation for going up there or make them nervous that, I didn't know what number I was. So I just waited patiently until it was my turn, until they said, go, it's your turn. So.
But Julie, talk about when the goal went in and just the explosion of emotion from all of you guys. I mean, I just love the camaraderie of this team. I mean, everybody, the personalities, whether it be Michelle or Mia, Lily, and just so many group. You guys are sisters that will always be sisters.
Yeah. I know when I'm seeing some of the images again, like it's still like to this day when we're all still very close. We have a 99ers group chat that we're constantly chatting on. And it really, that's the thing that when people say, oh, what do you miss the most? Or what's the most memorable experience of playing? And I think they'll think we talk about that moment, but I talk about that moment because of the people that were surrounding us. I mean, it was an incredible group of women who, down to the 19th, 20th player, 18th, 19th, 20th, who, didn't get many minutes, but were so invested in the team being successful that's the message. and a huge reason why we wanted our story to be told is that gets lost, I think, in current youth athletics and the competitive level. And it's all about my numbers and how I'm doing. And that team was all about the we being successful and the team being successful. And so, and, you know, when you have a superstar like Mia Hamm, who is about as selfless as they come. I mean, she's constantly thinking, how can I be a good teammate? I mean, you're going to see that that's a huge part of our foundation and what we're all about. And that's what I think I miss the most is I miss that camaraderie with those women.
Yeah. And the media really seemed to take off with Mia and a lot of commercials that she had. And she had the Gatorade commercial with Michael Jordan. Mm-hmm. I remember going to the Women's Sports Foundation the next year, and one of the football players had his daughter say, "Dad, who's that guy in the commercial with Mia Hamm?"
Exactly.
And I thought, how wonderful to hear that. But then you would like to continue to see that over the course of years. And how many years has that been now? Mm-hmm. And now you look at 2019, and where do you see this new generation of players? Abby's retired, Abby Wambach, and Megan's kind of become the face, and Alex Morgan has done a great job, and there's so many other big names. But where does this team go now from winning that World Cup?
Who's that to? Me or Brandi? Either of us?
Will you take it, and then Brandi?
Yeah, I'll start with that. I mean, I think the thing about this group is for them to win as they did. I mean, having seen them in 2015, covering them, which I honestly think, yeah, they were good, but they were lucky at times to win that World Cup, right? And they weren't their strongest self in 2015. 2019, this team, they just marched through everyone. I mean, to beat 5 European teams and the best in the world, and to do it in such emphatic fashion with all the chaos and craziness of, you know, they have an equal pay lawsuit, the president's tweeting at them. I mean, there was a lot of noise around that group that can be a distraction, as we know well. And yet they just duck on water, no problem, let's go. So to see them do it as well as they did in 19 was super fun for me. It is almost like a maternal feeling when I take my reporter hat off and I go back to my player feeling of just how fun it is to see, and from my kids' eyes, especially my 11 and 13-year-old, right? The excitement they have as well, that it's like it's coming full circle. It's like, okay, the baby's okay. She's all grown up. She's going to be all right. So, I mean, I think they got some discouraging news and disappointing for a lot of soccer fans about the equal pay lawsuit. I think it was less surprising from a legal standpoint. You hear a lot of lawyers say that they're, you know, the court of public opinion is very different than the court of legal opinion. And we knew that going in, but I still think that there's going to be settlement and a lot of positivity coming around this program going forward, and hopefully some strides made on the equal pay front as well.
And Brandi, your thoughts as far as 2019 and the World Cup and this team and these young women that are going to go on to continue to push women's soccer. And we've seen it in the WNBA. We've seen it in women's hockey in fighting for equal pay. And certainly the CBA and the WNBA has gotten better. But certainly soccer is really the high profile right now.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I feel like what Julie said about Mia Hamm, it can't go I think we have to talk about it more and more about, you know, that was initially one person carrying all this weight for the many, when I think what's going on now is that we have so many players who can help with the responsibility of positive leading and having their voices heard. And I think women's soccer is taking over the globe, and that's no disrespect to any other sport out there, but I'm very proud of what's happening in women's soccer in the United States, but also on a global scale, the influence that women's soccer is having, maybe for not just on the pitch, but in terms of health and wellness for women around the world. You know, I work with a friend of mine who does aid work in Armenia, for example, and she's helping their women's national team, and they scored their first ever international goal this year. And I saw the video, and the looks on their faces and the spirit in which they had when that happened that's life altering, right? And so the more that this team is present and the more that they stand up for themselves and every other young girl and woman who are playing soccer, it resonates to other places and spaces. And so I think, they have a big responsibility, but I think like Julie, myself, all the 99ers and every player that came before, I think we all realize that is not a burden. That is an absolute gift that we were given to our life, to share the stories and to give back the lessons that we learned and to continue to do so that there will be no conversation about pay equity. There will be no conversation about who doesn't get to play, because we'll all get to play and we'll all be valued for what we're worth.
I totally agree, but answer, Julie, start off as far as the discrepancy between what the women winning World Cup, with the men have never won a World Cup, right? And just the discrepancy as far as pay on what the teams are getting.
I think the crux of it and why they lost the court case is they're structured very different with their CBAs, right? Their collective bargaining agreements. So just to give quickly a little history and context, we always wanted more guaranteed type of contracts because we didn't have a large sum of money coming from an outside source of a professional club team like the men do, right? So a lot of their stability came from their professional club teams that paid millions of dollars, and they got insurance and all those other things that came with that. We didn't have that on the women's side. And so always our contracts were very different. We wanted more guarantees. We wanted injury protection. We wanted severance. We wanted maternity protection. So we on purpose signed a very different CBA. And so what happens is now the women are making a little bit more on the outside from their club teams, and maybe they'll start to shift that contract. So the men get paid only if you come in. So if you don't get brought in, so for example, right now the women are getting paid because they're on a guaranteed contract. The men are getting nothing because there's no games happening during COVID-19. So the judge obviously thought that the numbers over the last 5 years, because the women won 2 World Cups and the men didn't qualify, meant that they actually earned more over the last 5 years, which I think played against them. But I also think the fact that it's 2 very different CBAs, it's very hard to compare in that sense. And so not to get in the weeds too much. But the women's argument, of course, is just that, and what you said, but the women have to win 2 World Cups, right? They have to win almost every single game to be even in the ballpark of what the men are making. Having said all of that, I think with the new president, who's a 99er, Cindy Parlow is one of our former teammates, and they have a new CEO, that U.S. Soccer knows that even though they won, and in air quotes, right, most of that trial, they have lost the public sentiment and the PR battle. And so they want to settle still. So I think there will be movement in the right direction. I don't think it will be as much as the women thought they should make, but there definitely will be movement. And there will be good to come out of this in the end. I just hope that relationship gets fixed, because right now it's a bit fractured.
Yeah, and I'm excited because they've got to continue to carry the torch. And Brandi, talk about, even though the COVID-19 is going on, as far as, the Pro League and players going overseas and playing, what the Pro League has been like here in this country.
Well, again, I think we've seen leaps and bounds, right? And what has happened in women's soccer. We have a professional league that has lasted longer than any other professional league we've had. And this is the 3rd iteration of it. And so I think we have to feel really good about that. I know that right now Orlando is training. I've been seeing them on Twitter, and we've got some players out on the field, and there are viable options, overseas and in different countries. And so there's lots of options for these players to play. And I just want to go back to, if you don't mind, Annie and Jules, we're talking about what has happened here with U.S. Soccer, but I think also what we have another opportunity to do is change the way the global landscape is and how FIFA handles women's soccer in the future. And I think that's another reason why this case is so critical, because, U.S. Soccer can do so much. We don't know really what so much is yet, but we're trying to find that out, right? What they should do, what they can do, and what we'll get to. But FIFA is the governing body of all of soccer. And really, for me, this case, I think, is going to allow us to go back to FIFA. I think that, Jules, and you will know this better than me, but I think I'm correct when I say 1994 and 1999 were the two largest World Cups that FIFA has ever hosted. Am I right?
Well, 99 viewership, I just saw some numbers that came out the other day that Canada actually had, people attending. Canada in 2015 actually had more people than we did in 99, which I don't know if we can trust those Canadians with their numbers.
Okay, well, we'll take them. But like in terms of like the gross revenue from World Cups, those two are fair. I mean, you can compare those. They played in similar stadiums. We sold out the Rose Bowl for the final, just like I sat in the stands in 1994. And so I think those are things that we could compare, that we don't compare because the CBAs are so different, right? But FIFA could look at that and say, and we can use that to our advantage to say, look, here's what we do produce when we are on the same stage. And that should hold a lot of water, in my opinion, and change the way FIFA looks at women's soccer, which ultimately is really, Jules, I think what we want to have happen in the future, and hopefully the near future.
Well, even when you talk about media perception, FIFA perception, public perception, how important is the social media as far as today with the players and how they can bring, I think, the public back into their positive frame of mind?
Well, I think they've been, we've seen just how popular they are, right? I think that, when people argue, well, FIFA pays out a lot more to the men than the women, how can they be asking for equal pay, which is often what you hear from the counter side. I always argue, yes, they do pay out more for the men because they make more for the men and they've invested in the men for a very long time. But you could argue right now the women are bringing in more sponsorship revenue than the men, because I can tell you when a company is coming in right now, they're coming in to support the women's team in large part because there's more players on that women's team right now. And this is just a consequence of the cycle, right? With the men not qualifying in 18, there's new players coming in, they're rebuilding, and that will change again. But you could see the corporate and commercial value of the women has risen dramatically. And so now there really is a solid argument for why can't we just take that pot, split it, a percentage of it, not all of it, of course, because they need to do other programming, but split a percentage of it and just pay it equal to the men and pay it equal to the women.
That sounds
Jules,
easy.
Yeah, sorry, Annie. This last year was a perfect example of how that actually was working, because U.S. Soccer used to be able to take in that sponsor dollars and do whatever they wanted with it and put it into men's side, whatever percentage, women's side, whatever percentage. And I know you have some friends that work in Visa, and so do I. And they were the first group that said, we won't let you you don't get to decide. We're going to tell you, we will sponsor U.S. Soccer, and only if it's done in an equal fashion. Mm-hmm. And I don't think U.S. Soccer really appreciated that. And until they said, well, then we won't sponsor you. Mm. And then they said, oh, okay, well, yes, then we'll do that. So I think there is clout. There's clout and there's strength. And so and again, I don't like to hold it against each other, right? We're working for the same thing. And I've said this from the beginning when we were talking about the WUSA. We're not trying to promote women's soccer. We're trying to promote soccer. We want the best for everyone in the game. And so by doing the good work that we are doing, we're helping soccer. And for me, that's very important, because I think there's value in both of them, and there's a necessity of both of them. And so I feel that we have a real good chance to make soccer better as a whole.
So Brandi, in making soccer better, do you find that the 99ers are being consulted or involved with the 2019 players? Do they bring you guys back and consult with you guys and how we can do things better or what we can do differently?
We had a wonderful summit where in Los Angeles, where we met with the team and we had a brunch and we talked about things and we did icebreakers. And it was the first time in a long time when we literally sat together and said thanks and said congratulations and said we're here for each other, and really that we have to row the boat in the same direction, because we're all in this fight, or whatever you want to call it, in this battle, and we're engaged because we love it and we want it to be successful. And so I thought that was a great monumental event, Jules. If I do say so myself, I thought it was really incredible.
Agreed.
That's all you have to say, Foudy?
I keep feeling like you have to get to questions, so I'm trying to be quick.
Like the questions, I've been reading the questions as we've been talking, and you've answered a lot of the questions.
Oh, I have? Okay, good.
The penalty kick. How hot was it on the field?
I think there's a good friend to you, Annie. You know when like someone is like, you're trying to get to questions, I feel like my reporter anxiety. I was like, I gotta let her get to questions.
Here's a question. Did you have a pregame routine?
Yeah.
What was it?
I'll tell you, Julie's. It was to get in front of everybody's faces and dance like a fool and laugh as much as she could.
Green stuff.
My pregame routine was that the less I thought about the game, the better off I was. In fact, Christine Lilly used to always say to me, if I got serious, she'd be like, "What's wrong with you? You're too serious." And it was almost this paralysis by analysis, right? If you thought about it, then you started thinking and getting tighter, you start gripping more. And I noticed that I did that as a player. Like if I thought too much, it wasn't as instinctive, and I overthought it, and I got all, your confidence spirals out. So I was like, just have fun, dance. Not everyone
you guys, and here's another question as far as, everybody's asked Brandi about taking her jersey off and showing the bra. And I love that you have on the Dick's commercial, Dick's Sporting Goods, that you do that bra commercial. I love that. And,
yes.
But as a team, I was like going, what was going through your mind? So she took her jersey off. She had a sports bra. Bathing suits show more than a sports bra.
Indeed, they do. Yes, they do. First, I want to give a shout out to Elle Gintner as the director of that. That was a very much women-driven production. So I was very happy to be a part of that. And going back to the Rose Bowl, of course, it's always phenomenal. And it brings back so many wonderful moments, like the driving up to the stadium and pulling in, and just the energy that that happens before one of these big games is just, I wish I could find something else in life that mimics that, because I would put it in a bottle and I would give it away to people, because it's just so it's spectacular. It's so fun.
Well, I was at a couple Olympic gold medal games for you guys, but the Rose Bowl, like you just said, Brandi, going up to the Rose Bowl, and Julie, you've got a comment as far as just what that stadium means, not just what it means for Pasadena and Los Angeles and the state of California, but really the 99ers. You guys are so much a history of part of the Rose Bowl. Foudy.
Sorry. I thought you were going to Brandi first.
She's taking a nap. She naps with her eyes open.
Have you ever
she's
seen
like a frog.
I'm sorry. I thought you were going to Brandi.
Okay, so yeah.
It's why it's so iconic to us. It's why we wanted to shoot the 99ers film, right? Our redo of it, with us sitting on that grass. So we literally set a day where we're like, okay, everyone's going to fly in. We're going to do it but like sitting on the grass. I wanted to be on the field and back there. And I remember walking in for that shoot in, when was it, Brandi? 2014? Yeah. So, I hadn't been to the Rose Bowl in a while with it empty like that. Like you come for, football games or whatever, but soccer games, I hadn't been with it empty. And you walk in, and we came in that same tunnel where we drove in on the bus. And I remember just like this eerie, like, oh my gosh, that was the tunnel where we were warming up. And this is when we walked out. And so it's just, it always will those aerial photos, like the one on the bottom of this and what we've been seeing, that aerial photo of just this beautiful facility jam-packed full. I mean, it was everything we dreamed of for so long. So, yeah, it's super special for us.
Well, it's been super special for all of us to listen. Both of you have such great stories, and you are icons. You're Hall of Famers. You're World Cup winners, Olympic winners, and but just winners in life and in friendship. So thank you so much, Julie and Brandi, for being here. And we're going to say join us live every Saturday for the free Rose Bowl live event. And thanks for making the Rose Bowl Stadium the #1 college football stadium of all time. Everybody stay safe while you're quarantined, and hopefully this will end soon. But you guys give us so much inspiration. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank you, Annie.
Okay.
Love you,
Take care.
Jules. Bye. Love you, B.
Love you guys.
Chastain will take it.